your colonial mental setup is getting exposed in front of all of them.
At the same time, another thing that I wanted to also state here very clearly is how you guys have been able to gaslight the indigenous people out there. Just like how we asked a couple of minutes back, who is telling and who is demanding that Kailasa is unwelcomed and Kailasa is not accepted by the indigenous? Just blatant lies. There has not been a single reference. There is no such statement that has been made by the actual indigenous communities who are there. It is just blatant lies that is fabricated by you people. And we have been continuously working with all the legitimate indigenous communities. A single one of them has spoken against Kailasa. Rather, it's the other way around. It is the indigenous communities who have been working and they are feeling so much more empowered by Kailasa, seeking support during the historical persecution that they have been going through by the anti-indigenous media, such as you guys, who dictate how they need to live. Doesn't this sound a little funny and horrific at the same time, where they are given the rights as per the constitution, but who dictates? Actually, it's you guys who are a nobody there. And you guys dictate terms on how they live, what they need to do, who they need to engage with, what relationship they need to enter into, who they can sign and establish diplomatic relations with. Let's be very clear, your intent, your idea, your context with which you guys have been functioning, each and every one of the anti-indigenous media houses who have tried to exploit this entire situation is very clear. In fact, we did have even a glimpse of how and what kind of torture you guys have been giving for the indigenous people out there. When our monks and our nuns were abducted, when they were kidnapped, when they're forcefully detained, you guys had the cheapness to go spy and to be able to go around and show the photographs, hide and take the photographs of what is going on. When you are able to go to that extent, why you guys were never able to show the difficulties that are faced by the indigenous communities out there? Because you don't care about them. As simple and straightforward as that. This is a systematic persecution that is caused by you guys. It is not a coincidence. It is a very thoroughly planned disinformation campaign that is being spread to suppress and oppress the indigenous rights and the indigenous nations, the indigenous people.
Actually, I want to highlight a very important point based on what was just shared, because this is systematic and we have seen this pattern repeat so many times. Like, I just want to quote an example from the El Periodico racist media channels article. We had just shared with all of you yesterday, and even day before yesterday, we were sharing with all of you about how when our monks, when they were going to get supplies for continuing their services, for which purpose they were getting into the boat to just go to the next town, they had already planted some of their mercenaries to go and attack our monks, right? This is what had actually happened. And because the indigenous people, the local indigenous people did not attack us. They were in fact very, very friendly with us. Even now they want us there. But this anti-Hindu, Hindu-phobic magazine, or the media channel, El Periodico, claims that the people, the local people, had gone and attacked to try getting some documents. This is exactly like how they do it each time. I want to take us back to the year 2010. 2010, just on the 1st of March 2010, where there's a large Annadan that happened in Tiruvannamalai. And after the Annadan, people had all, like Swamiji had said, I think some few lakhs people had come. And after all of them had gone to rest, at that hour of night, there were mercenaries who were planted in multiple locations, in different ashrams, and we were not aware of what was going on. And at the same time, The very next morning, there was a heinous attack that was launched, trying to attack and assassinate the Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism, who at that time was there physically in Tiruvannamalai. And do you know how the media had projected? And even before any one of us knew, the media was already there with all their vehicle, their cameras, everything, and already started streaming. It was as if they were just waiting. The mercenaries were just waiting for the cue from the director to be able to go and attack so that it can be captured and projected everywhere. And that's exactly what happened. And they started claiming falsely that the locals were attacking. And that's the same pattern we are seeing now, same thing repeating even in Bolivia. Not a single of those people who came with arms like the rifles and knives and guns and threatening our monks at gunpoint, none of them were indigenous. But see how manipulative these media channels are. El Periodico, I want your explanation on this. How can you claim, first of all, you are not an indigenous person, and those people who are attacking, they are not indigenous. How can you manipulate the facts and try to claim and project as if the indigenous people are attacking?
I also want to use this opportunity to bring to light to all the Hindus around the world. When we look at these as an isolated attack, when we look at these as isolated incidents, rather, we feel, oh, okay, they did some mistake, so they are facing it. No. Now you can see the same pattern, not just repeating within the countries, but across the entire world. So what does this actually mean? It very clearly defines how there are larger forces that are controlling the narratives that are being set forth. What we are looking at is a war. This is the fact. It may not be with guns, it may not be with ammunitions, but that does not take it away from the fact that what we Hindus are facing, what we indigenous people are facing, is a war on our rights. And even every one of us are going to be burned and destroyed in the same war. It is a fact. It is every one of our right. It is each and every one of our responsibility to make sure that this information reaches out to as many people as possible, to empower as many indigenous communities as possible, to voice out and be the voice of the indigenous people around the world. It is our responsibility, following suit of the Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism, Bhagavan Sri Nityananda Paramashiva, who has dedicated his entire life, sacrificed his entire life for this one purpose. It is not the Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism uses Hinduism to exploit anything, no, but because of holding strong to the Hindu identity, it is because of holding on to the Hindu legitimacy that the Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism is being attacked. We have a comment from Amu. She's sharing that our Hindu community in US is also facing attack, especially in the campuses. Hindu phobia has risen from 2021. Exactly, Ma. What you're telling is exactly true. This is exactly what we are seeing here as well. And we Hindus are criminally negligent, where we feel the attack, the fire is not on my house. When it comes to my house, we will see. That is how we lost the entire tradition. We have another comment from Moo. She's sharing, yes, US, Canada, Malaysia are some countries where the attacks against Hindus have increased dramatically. Exactly. It is what we as Hindus have missed doing fundamentally, is being exploited by these anti-indigenous, Hindu-phobic, Hindu-mesic media, Hindu-mesic elements and powers which are there. So we have to stand for what is the truth. We have to defend for what is right. And despite the relentless persecution that the Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism has been going through, that Kailasa has been going through, we continue to stand for what is right. And we also want to give this as a call for every one of you to do the same, for every one of you to stand with us, to stand with Kailasa, to stand with all the indigenous and protect what rightfully is ours.
And we also have Ma Robin Taylor, who is saying the Pandavas, with the guidance of Krishna, emerged victorious. All the Kauravas were annihilated, and only the 5 Pandava brothers and Krishna survived. Choose Paramashiva, he has already won. Yes, absolutely, Ma. And see, we also need to understand this is a war that we are going through. This is just like how the Mahabharata war happened at that time, where Krishna emerged victorious. Once again, we are going through a war. So it is very important that all of us, we get awakened to this, and we drop the criminal negligence, and we take action so that the same history of persecution that we've been going through doesn't get repeated. And see, all of these media channels, they're falsely accusing the Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism of rape, of sexual assault, of kidnapping. I mean, what right do they have? How dare they? Because we Hindus, we are not doing anything about it. But I do want to ask these media channels also, what right do you have? How dare you accuse the Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism, the ecclesiastical head of 2 billion Hindus, and also saying that he's self-proclaimed? But don't worry, we're going to go there and you're going to get your fair share for that comment as well. But let me just give you the facts about what you're saying, that he's wanted for rape, for kidnapping and sexual assault. And these statements being spread are nothing but blatant lies. And we have irrefutable court documents that categorically prove that the Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism has never, ever been convicted of any crimes, period. And the hatred...
Swamiji was exonerated. The US courts exonerated Swamiji.
Exactly. And these so-called victims, they've been imprisoned, they've been fined over 12 million US dollars, and they've also been deported from the United States. And you see, this hatred that is being directed at the Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism, it stems from the simple one fact that he has revived a Hindu state. And certain anti-Hindu forces, such as these media, they cannot just digest this. And you see, also one thing is, since the Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism Swamiji has already been exonerated by competent US courts, as per the doctrine of res judicata, the Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism should not face re-litigation of the same issue by the same false accusers in any subsequent proceedings. And additionally, double jeopardy protects the Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism, Swamiji, from being tried for the same issue twice. But however, these same false allegations by the same false accusers are being still litigated in India, invoking vexatious litigation or abuse of the court process. And you see, I would like actually, Matadvapriya, if you can share about the false kidnapping, because you've been directly involved in that. So I think you should definitely share about this.
Yeah, I think because they have falsely portrayed as if I was kidnapped. And we had to prove, and this was such a baseless accusation. See, all the accusations till now that have been levied upon Swamiji have been so frivolous and baseless. Like for example, this so-called sexual assault false allegation that's been levied upon Swamiji. Firstly, Swamiji was exonerated. The US courts had exonerated. And on top of that, there was never a single victim. A victimless rape charge. And there was no person who was ever kidnapped, because they put a false accusation saying I was kidnapped. And we had to fight for it for so many years to prove they were not kidnapped. And we have won in that case. Come on. how many more years are these fake media channels going to drag the same thing? Why don't you publish the court report where we are clearly shown that we are not kidnapped? The court has dismissed it as absolutely baseless and frivolous and dismissed the whole case. How come that is not there in your reports? So we demand answers now. We want answers from these fake racist media channels. How dare you put the accusation of kidnap when the court order has clearly proven that there is no kidnap? I want an answer because we demand this justice, because now you are even violating and you are showing as if you know more than what the courts have ordered. So we demand justice right now. The media channels have to answer. These anti-Hindu, Hindu-phobic media channels have to answer for all these false allegations.
And, who are they? Really, who are they to put such allegations on the Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism, ecclesiastical head of 2 billion Hindus? They are nothing. And, just here's the grim reality of what he had to go through. He had to go through 70 assassination attempts, 250 sexual assaults, 120 false legal cases, more than 17,000 hours of hate speech, and 25,000 print articles in more than 50 countries. Now, how dare they saying that the Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism is wanted for rape, for kidnapping? What guts do they have?
No, and I really want an answer from them. Actually, this whole case, it's so baseless, ma. How are they able to even put that, even after the court order? First of all, you're supposed to be innocent until proven guilty. But on Swamiji's case, they made it otherwise. But even after the court has dismissed the case, and we have won in that case, how dare these media channels still carry this false narrative? Now we demand an answer from you. You are answerable to us. How dare you spread such malicious hatreds, which is very clear. Even after the court documents are there, which clearly show that we are not kidnapped, how dare you call us as kidnapped? So this is proving it more and more, how every statement of yours is baseless, frivolous, and therefore you need to apologize. You need to take down all these fake news right away, or what you're going to face is going to be heavy, serious legal charges.
And just one thing that I want to really point out here, that the Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism has been exonerated more than 10 years ago by the US courts. More than 10 years ago. And these anti-Hindu media are still spreading the same false narratives, trying to show that the Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism is still a criminal, is still wanted for rape and kidnapping. More than 10 years ago. So how come they are not publishing the exoneration of the Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism? And that is a question actually also for all Hindus. How come Hindus do not know about these facts? And how come we are not being ferocious, serious about answering these media channels? Because we are not. That is why even after 10 years, these anti-Hindu racist media are having the guts to do that.
And you anti-indigenous media, the Hindu-phobic and Hindu-mystic media, your so-called rape allegations, you guys literally run a recycling program because no matter how many evidences we have, it doesn't matter to you. Your regurgitation of the disproven rape allegations, they represent the journalistic equivalent of drinking spoiled milk and then complaining about the taste. That's exactly what you guys are doing. These allegations that have been thoroughly investigated, adjudicated, and dismissed in multiple. Now let's look at the timeline of your investigative team has somehow seemed to have missed. In 2010, a deepfake video masterminded by the Hindu mystic forces was unleashed by the notorious media outlets, and they did it all out to incite hatred against the Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism. This was followed by a rape case, a malicious one, with one fascinating detail. You know what? As mentioned earlier, the complaint did not even have the victim of rape. Despite this glaring omission, the Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism was unlawfully detained and arrested for 53 days. And during those 53 days, the media claimed that multiple women, some articles reaching as high as 100, had been raped. There is, as per the records, there is not a single woman who has even confirmed as a victim. And despite that, just exactly like what you guys are doing now, did the same, telling that the Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism had raped over 100 women. Yet, after questioning more than 100 people on the same, despite being bribed, solicited for false victims, the police could not even find one single victim. Be very clear, not a single victim was found. Finally, the police themselves submitted a memo to the court admitting that they had no evidences whatsoever. But why let the police statements and the court documents interfere with your scandal narrative? This exact case was duplicated in the United States as well, and it was promptly dismissed more than 10 years ago. The US courts have not only exonerated the Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism, but have imposed substantial fines on the accusers for making false allegations and defamation. Over 6 million US dollars of fine has been placed. This judicial decision validates the Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism's innocence and demonstrates the malicious intent of the accusers, exactly what you are all doing today. This is one of the worst happenings in the entire history. The persecution that the Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism has gone through in the entire history, that is being used and abused by the so-called media, the anti-indigenous media, the anti-Hindu media, Hindu-phobic media, just so that they can continue to live off by abusing and by trying to keep everything under their control, by trying to keep the Hindus brainwashed, by trying to keep the Hindus under control, by trying to keep the indigenous under control. Because if Kailasa grows, if the Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism is allowed to do what he does, then everyone gets a right to voice for themselves, which they do not want. So it's a very convenient way and a very systematic destruction that has been going on.
And I also want to add in about this deep fake video, which was just mentioned about, because the very COO of that same media house had actually openly come and admitted how it was completely fabricated. We have the top forensic reports, the top most forensic reports that are very clearly showing it is fabricated. Yet, the same thing is again and again being brought up because it's a clear persecution. This is not any kind of a legal situation. No, it's an illegal persecution that is being targeted upon the Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism, Kailasa, and the indigenous nations. The reason why this whole attack is being launched right now is because Swamiji has taken a very powerful stance to give voice to the voiceless. I want to just highlight some statistics to show what was the condition of the indigenous people. You know, the colonialism's greatest hits, a legacy of, oops, we stole everything. For example, land theft. 95% of the Amazon's indigenous territories were stolen post-1492. And the colonizers' logic, finders keepers and losers weepers. This was the actual legal defense they had probably. And same way, they had forced labor. 10 million plus indigenous lives were lost in rubber plantations that was being as forced labor by these colonialists. And do you know, 72% of this Bolivia's indigenous peoples live below the poverty line? This is as per the statistics from the World Bank 2023. Same way, 1 in 3 indigenous children in the Amazon suffer chronic malnutrition. This is as per UNFAO. This was the condition. So when Kailasa started flipping the script, where every day, daily free meals have been served the last so many months, transforming their lives, and where we are supporting them to protect their land where we are empowering people to keep these poachers away, to keep these illegal miners away. And we are supporting with mental healthcare by teaching them yoga completely for free. It is because of this that these racist, anti-Hindu, Hindu-phobic, anti-indigenous media channels are targeting us and attacking us. This is the same pattern we have seen again and again and again. We saw the same thing in 2003. We saw the same thing in 2010. We saw the same thing in 2019, and we're seeing the same thing happen now. It is never the local people. It is never the actual people who are experiencing the benefit ever attack. No, it is these mercenaries who have been paid, brought in, and who are made to be look alike of the existing indigenous people, and they are portrayed. It is just for those video footages. You will see clearly the way it is directed. Exactly as per their camera angles, these people will move, these people will go and attack, and then there will be a story cover. This is what has been happening time and again. That is what we're seeing. This is part of the colonialist playbook. And Hindus, it's time for us to wake up. And I do see many of us are already waking up to the way how Hindu-phobic mental setup is spreading everywhere. Hindu phobia is becoming more and more. And we as Hindus need to stand up for this. Hindus' lives matter. Your voice matters. Each one of you, every single one of your voices matter. Don't think the person who's sitting next to you may not be interested in knowing this. No, then you are being a reluctant warrior. Then you are being a cause for many of our brother monks, sister monks there to die. No, it is time to give up on your reluctance. Stop being a reluctant warrior. It is time for us to wake up. Like how Bhagavan Krishna tells in Bhagavad Gita, Shudram Hridayam Daurbalyam Tyaktotishta Parantapa. It is time for us to drop our reluctance, drop being a reluctant warrior, stand up. You need to be a part of this war. All of us need to unite. Tell the people who are next to you that you are seeing, your relatives, your family members, tell them what Hindus are facing. Tell them it's time to wake up from our criminal negligence.
And we also, when we look at this whole happening that have been continuously being repeated across decades, if not centuries, it just makes it so obvious that when character assassination masquerades as journalism, this is exactly the result. The media's fantasy crime novel, where you can actually portray, the way they portray is that the Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism is the villain in these stories. And of course, the media loves its fictional villains. It seems that the journalism that these guys come up with came with a creative writing specializing in character assassination. That is what we are all looking at. When they portray the Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism as a self-proclaimed leader or a pro-fascist sect, it is not just wrong, it is just spectacular, almost impressively wrong. Where do they find the words like this? It is like penguins are the rulers of the Sahara is wrong. No, it is not just wrong. It's just impressive the way you guys can go. Let's introduce all of you fellows to something revolutionary in journalism, and they're called as facts. I know it's a very terrifying concept for every one of you media fellows because that is against your money. That is against your industry. That's against your business. So why would you bother about facts? The Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism's lineage tracks back to tens of thousands of years of Hinduism's oldest and most ancient spiritual institutions. The Supreme Pontiff is the 139th Pontiff of the ancient lineage. He is not just some random person who woke up one morning and decided, oh, the word guru sounds nice, so I am going to become a guru. No, he is not like how you guys just come up one day, you wake up in the night, and then you feel like, okay, tomorrow let's assassinate him, and then plot it out and execute it. No, your so-called self-proclaimed rebel is the equivalent of calling the Pope that Italian guy with a funny hat who decides that he likes churches. I'm sorry, but this is exactly what you guys are doing. It is not just insulting, it is a attack, arrogance, and ignorance. When you call the Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism as self-proclaimed, You're not just attacking one person, you are attacking the entire Hindu ecclesiastical succession system. Would you call the Dalai Lama self-proclaimed because he was forced into exile? Would you label the Pope as self-proclaimed during the Avignon exile? Why? Your double standards are showing up very evidently, and they are as subtle as a neon sign in a monastery. But this is exactly what you fellows are doing. Same way, your fixation on labeling the Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism as fugitive. Come on. It reveals that either you are having a profound ignorance of international law, or the other way, which I think is the truth, a very, very deliberate attempt to mislead all your readers. And I think it's both. Interpol, again, another allegation that comes in. Interpol. What do you guys know? The actual international law enforcement organization with the actual authority, which is Interpol, has rejected any request to issue notices on the Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism based on the evidences provided to you, because Interpol is a legitimate organization that has the rights. Unlike you, mafia, unlike you, anti-indigenous mafia, media, Hindu-phobic, Hindu-mesic media, who just like to throw things around for your breakfast. Indigenous communities are under attack. The Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism has been under attack, and the Interpol has very clearly given a statement that there is no basis on which the Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism can be attacked. But apparently, your newsroom has more legal authority than Interpol. What a beautiful, great achievement that you guys have. And also, I also have another question for all of you people. Do you also perform like citizen's arrest in your spare time? Because that's exactly what you people are doing. Even in terms of your own editorial team, we might understand, no conviction means not a fugitive. Please understand, in layman's terms, I'm telling. The Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism is not guilty. The Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism is innocent in every single false accusation that has been cast, that has been deliberately put on the Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism. So this in layman's terms means if there is no conviction, that means he is not a fugitive. This is a very straightforward equation. And despite nearly 15 years of malicious prosecution and litigation in India, the Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism has never been convicted of any crime. Not one, zero, because he has not committed any crime, and it is anti-indigenous, anti-Hindu, Hindu-phobic, Hindu-mesic media like you all who try to exploit at every given opportunity, trying to delegitimize, trying to character assassinate the Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism.
And Maharaj, I would like to add to these false allegations of being a self-proclaimed guru of God, because this is the same accusation that we've been seeing, not just in the Bolivian media attack, but globally. Whenever these media channels they would be attacking, they would all be accusing the Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism as being self-proclaimed. So we should tell what are the facts, and we are going to be showing some pictures also. See, these attacks, these are vicious attacks that reeks of supremacist ideology and prejudice, targeting Hinduism with a series of defamatory narratives. And so these are really undermining the statue of the Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism, Bhagavan Nityananda Paramashivam, as the Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism, dismissing his rightful position with disrespect and mockery. And it's also questioning the formal process of identifying and recognizing the Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism as the incarnation of Paramashiva. There's a very clear science in Hinduism of identifying incarnations, and these media channels are just making a mockery out of it by calling the Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism as being self-proclaimed.
And the photographs that we were all looking at is not just some Toy Story or some fictional character in a movie that is there. Here, we're looking at the Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism being coronated as the head, as the sovereign of the Shamala Pita Sarvajna Pitam. He has been coronated as the 293rd pontiff of this great ancient tradition. And the rights of the Shamala Pita Sarvajna Pitam have been documented in history. Even as recent as just before the Indian independence, the British themselves have very clearly recognized the rights that were vested in the pontiff of the Shamala Pita Sarvajna Pitam. What we're looking at the photographs here is the historical lineage. When we are talking about 293rd as a number, it means the 293rd succession, where the Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism is the rightful heir and the inheritor for this great ancient civilization. And this is one. Like this, there are 21 such ancient kingdoms, ecclesiastical institutions, of which the Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism is the head. As you all can see, right from the time of Paramashiva, the lineage goes all the way to the Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism, and all of this is well documented. For all our media friends and all the anti-indigenous, Hindu-mesic, Hindu-phobic media out there, why don't you open your eyes for once? Go and look at facts rather than presenting your own opinions and your own false narratives. If you are interested in any kind, if you are even interested in a bit of integrity to the journalistic values that you're all explicitly supposed to uphold, you would look at the facts and evidences. I'd like to invite one of you, head over to kailasa.org, read about these for yourself, and learn the real truth, learn the real history, before you try to come and try to just wishy-wash whatever you want here out in the public. Public and the mass is not a spitting bowl where you just spit whatever you don't like. No. We are people who want intelligence. We want information. We want rights to what is really happening. And that is our right. And you are expected to serve the public that way. So head over to kailasa.org, look at these facts for yourself and speak with evidences. Don't just try to put out blatant voices, letting out your steam just because nobody out there in your country is interested in listening to you. Don't try to pick up different things from everywhere.
And what you're reporting deliberately obscures is the transformation of this case from prosecution to persecution, a fact recognized by the international human rights lawyers and organizations from worldwide. I just want to highlight a few distinguished legal experts, including Jeffrey Robertson Casey, who is a former UN Justice Council jurist, and Maliha Wilson, who is a former Assistant Deputy Attorney General of Ontario, and numerous others have provided legal opinions confirming that what Swamiji, the Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism, is facing is a persecution. In February 2024, the Ramanagara Indian Court acknowledged the heinous crimes committed by co-conspirators against the Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism and Kailasa, charging Lenin Karupan with rape, extortion, and criminal intimidation. The massive systematic anti-Hindu media campaign has caused documented harm in over 100,000 instances. 70 plus assassination attempts directly on the life of Swamiji, the Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism. 250 plus sexual assaults were done on the Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism's monks, nuns, and disciples by these Hindu-mesic, Hindu-phobic forces. And 120 plus false legal cases, 17,000 hours of hate speech and defamation campaign in online media, 25,000 defamatory articles across more than 50 countries. You are answerable to all of this. Why are you not showing these? These are the facts. So these are the facts that too being supported by so many human rights lawyers. How come you as a media channel are not publishing a single one of these?
And I also want to add a couple of informations out here. And you know what is more interesting along with what we're looking at is that you don't really care about anything. As a matter of fact, you don't care about the evidences. You don't care about the facts. You don't care about the laws. You don't care about anything. The bottom line of this entire thing is the res judicata and double jeopardy, and you don't care about anything at all. Now, when we look at the scale, as per the res judicata, when we look at the scale, the judiciary of US is way high in comparison whether with India or various other countries which are there. So what is it supposed to mean? If the same case is tried in US and there is already an exoneration, there is already a verdict that has been given, then naturally everyone is supposed to be following the same. Now, it is based on this. I also want to let you know, it is based on this that Interpol has very clearly, categorically refused that there are any accusations on the SPH, because naturally, 10 years back, I want to reiterate it on this again and again, 10 years back, the Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism was exonerated. He was completely exonerated, and that same is the only thing that is running around so far. And even now, it is only relentless persecution that is going on. As we heard earlier, from prosecution, it is persecution that we have been going through. It is lawfare that is there. Under the doctrine of res judicata, the Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism is not supposed to face relitigation for the same issues by the same accusers in any subsequent proceedings. And double jeopardy further protects the Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism for being tried twice for the exact same thing. Yet, the same allegation by the same false accusers continue to be litigated in India, and they keep getting regurgitated by media outlets like yours. This is a textbook example of vexatious litigation and journalistic malpractice. What you people are just absolute rowdies and thugs who are trying to using the garb of media, but trying to spread hatred in the entire world. The truth is very simple, but what to do? It is inconvenient for your narrative.
Absolutely, because this isn't about justice. It's about silencing a powerful Hindu voice. The Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism revived a Hindu state, and certain anti-Hindu forces cannot tolerate it. Your reporting isn't just biased. It is complicit in the systematic persecution. More than 40 media outlets from 14 countries have already removed similar defamatory content and issued apologies after recognizing their errors. They chose integrity. What are you going to choose? The world is watching. Right now, you can see the comment section. We have people around the world. We are seeing people. Actually, I'm seeing so many people have posted their countries. Malaysia, Singapore, Canada, USA, so many USA. And I'm seeing Guadeloupe, so many France. You can see the comment section. You can know for yourself what wide range of audience the international community is watching you right now. So you can decide, what are you going to choose? See, the world is watching. Truth does not require your validation. Hindu traditions don't cease to exist because you have misinterpreted them. Sorry. You need to choose wisely. Your credibility, if it still exists, hangs in the balance. So better make your choice right.
And also make sure that when you try to come over and try to put these false, blatant allegations, whether it's on the Supreme Pontiff of Hinduism or the indigenous communities who are out there, remember one thing: the world has advanced. The world is not still sitting in ancient times, which actually is dependent on you for getting any kind of information. The world is not dependent on you. In fact, just like how you use all of these informations, twist them as per your narrative, and you use them same way, in fact, even other way, the world has become intelligent enough to see the fakeness, to see the hidden garb and your hidden agendas and everything being exposed. So the only way that you guys can even survive in this industry is by voicing out what the real truth is, by abiding by the laws of your country, the international laws and the local laws. So make sure that you keep a watch on your tongue and make sure that you speak the facts with evidences. We are more than open and willing to hear out from every one of you media houses out there. You need any clarifications? Come to us. Let's see. We have evidences for every single fact that we are speaking, that we are quoting here. Eldaba being one of the most prominent, and I'm very sure that you guys have just purchased it, just like how you purchase other people. You guys have purchased your viewership, and you guys being one of the so-called technically prominent people out there in Bolivia, which is heavily funded by the colonizers and the colonizing mental setup predators who are there. It is you people who have started this entire allegation. And be very clear, what you have started is an all-out war, not on just Kailasa, but on all the indigenous nations, the entire indigenous community, the entire international law itself. By discouraging the various international laws, by delegitimizing, trying to legitimize the indigenous nations who are there, you have gotten into a very wrong grave and that you have dug for yourself. So either come out clean, apologize, or we are not going to back off. You are going to face what you have given us.
And now you are blaming Kailasa to be evil environmental exploiters? Are you serious? And just when we thought that your creative journalism couldn't get any more imaginative, you've really outdone yourself. And bravo on inventing yet another fictional narrative that Kailasa is an environmental exploiter engaged in carbon market and neo-colonizing. So what is next in your fantasy series? Kailasa secretly breeding dragons in the Amazon, building a Death Star in Bolivia. Your accusation that we are exploiting natural resources or gaming carbon markets would be hilarious if it weren't so offensively hypocritical. So let's take a moment in the reality check. See, accusing Kailasa of neocolonization isn't just wrong. It is absurdly, spectacularly ironic. It's like accusing the fire extinguishers of starting the fires. And so Kailasa represents indigenous Hindus who have survived the largest genocide in human history. More than 500 million Hindus killed, more than 4 million Hindus enslaved, more than 160 million Hindus were starved to death through orchestrated famines. And we've had our temples razed, our educational institutions destroyed, and our ancient texts, more than 80 million of them, burnt by the colonizers and the invaders. And we are literally a nation formed by victims of colonization. So when you can accuse us, an indigenous people who has suffered centuries of colonial exploitation, of being colonizers ourselves, you are not just wrong. You are exhibiting a level of historical blindness so profound that it deserves its own medical classification.
And your neo-colonial savior complex, projecting much. Let's discuss what's really happening here. Projection on an IMAX scale. Because for centuries, Western powers and media have appointed themselves the guardians of what indigenous people can or cannot do. Your paternalistic assumption that indigenous communities need your protection from, check notes, other indigenous communities reveals more about your colonial mindset than about Kailasa's intentions. Bolivia's indigenous communities have agency, intelligence, and constitutional rights to self-determination. When they choose to partner with another indigenous nation, which is us, suddenly this racist, anti-Hindu, Hindu-phobic media journalists such as El Mundo or El Deber swoops in like a colonial savior to protect from their own decisions. That's not journalism. Excuse me. That's neocolonialism wearing a press badge.
Similarly, just like what we are looking at, you guys are not environmental stewardship. You guys are not protecting the environment in any way. On the contrary, we are actually doing it. While you have been very busy crafting the environmental villain narratives, here's what Kailasa actually stands for. Our 16,500-year-old tradition declares, "My mother is earth and I am her son." Prithvi Sukta in Atharva Veda. It very clearly declares. Environmental policy, environmental stewardship is not just our policy, it is literally written into our very DNA. And this is described in our oldest sacred texts, which you don't even know. Our agreements with these indigenous communities are explicitly towards this. And we have implemented zero carbon initiatives across all our humanitarian missions in over 196 countries. Kailasa has its presence in all of them. Our clean water, sustainable farming, renewable energy plans, and programs have benefited millions on ground. Meanwhile, the corporate interests that you conveniently ignore continue their actual resource extraction across indigenous territories. Why don't you just look at how conveniently all you anti indigenous media houses have conveniently hidden the entire illegal mining, illegal deforestation, and resource exploitation that has been going on in the last, let's take even the last few years, 3 years. It's not that it's a thing of past, it has been going on every single day. The these things, these corporate interests that you very conveniently ignore. Why? Because naturally that's your bread and butter. The problem is attacking them does not generate the same clicks as attacking us. So naturally, what do? Attack us because you can feed, you can be a predator on the indigenous and vulnerable communities out there.
And let's look at your colonial double standouts. You're saying that the rules are for thee, but not for me. Your selective outrage exposes a pattern of double standouts that would be comical if it weren't so harmful. When the Western NGOs partner with indigenous communities, humanitarian cooperation, they say, when Kailasa does exactly the same, it is called neocolonization. When Western companies establish carbon offset projects, it is called green innovation. When Kailasa supports sustainable indigenous practices, you call it carbon market exploitation. When Western nations maintain diplomatic relations, you call it international cooperation. And when Kailasa forms diplomatic relations partnership, you call it infiltration. These double standards aren't subtle. They are as obvious as a neo sign in a nature preserve. They reveal that your concern isn't really about environmental protection or indigenous rights as you claim it to be. It's about maintaining the colonial power dynamic where Western entities retain the exclusive right to engage with indigenous communities.
Absolutely, Ma. Actually, the way how our approaches, which is the anti-colonization playbook. See, Kailas's engagement with indigenous communities represent the exact opposite of what the colonizers are doing. First, we recognize and amplify indigenous sovereignty. Unlike the historical colonizers who denied the indigenous self-determination, we explicitly acknowledge and supported our agreements include language that reinforces indigenous autonomy and require government ratification.
And same way, the another point that we are looking at is Kailasa prioritizes indigenous knowledge preservation. This is unlike the colonizers who suppressed and oppressed the indigenous wisdom. We work day and night to document, to preserve, and to revitalize the traditional knowledge systems, recognizing their value for sustainable living. This is exactly what we do. And this falls apart from the colonizers throughout the history.
And we support development on indigenous terms, unlike these colonizers who impose external development models. We follow indigenous leadership in determining what sustainable development means for their communities.
Absolutely, and we advocate for the indigenous representation. Unlike the colonizers who are so busy, who only silence the indigenous voices, we work to ensure indigenous perspectives are heard in international forums. UAN, United Ancient Nations, is exactly that. And this is what is threatening the people, threatening the colonizers.
And if you look at the facts, we are the people, we are the victims of colonization because we have undergone centuries of trauma, centuries of exploitation. So we understand what it is to go through this persecution, and precisely the reason why